Have you ever noticed that the loudest and most confident voice in your life is actually the one inside your own head? We spend every second of every day listening to a constant stream of thoughts and opinions and worries. We treat this inner voice like a respected professor or a wise judge who always knows the truth. We follow its instructions without question, and we feel deep shame when it tells us we are not good enough. But what if that voice is not a professor at all? What if your mind is more like a clumsy clown who keeps tripping over its own feet? Most of us walk through the world carrying a heavy burden of seriousness. We believe that our thoughts are solid and important and that we must manage them with great effort. We try to organize our minds like a perfect office, but we find that the papers are always flying everywhere. We feel embarrassed when we notice how chaotic our inner world really is. We might be sitting in a serious business meeting while a part of our brain is busy wondering what we should have for dinner or replaying an argument from 5 years ago. This gap between who we want to be and what our mind is actually doing creates a lot of stress. We are going to explore why the most powerful tool for mental health is not more discipline but a sense of humor. We will look at how the greats in the world of wisdom learned to stop taking themselves so seriously. We will see why looking directly at the mess in your head can actually lead to a deep and lasting peace. It is a journey from being a victim of your thoughts to becoming someone who can simply laugh at the ridiculous nature of being human. On the surface, we believe that a healthy mind should be calm and orderly. The surface concept here is that meditation and self-care are about fixing the chaos so we can finally be in control. We look at teachers of wisdom and assume they have reached a state of perfect silence where no silly thoughts ever enter their heads. On the surface, it seems like the goal of looking at our minds is to become a more serious and professional version of ourselves. We think that if we work hard enough, we can stop the embarrassing impulses and the strange dreams and the random worries. This surface view tells us that the mind is a machine that just needs the right repair. We assume that if we feel humiliated by our own thoughts, it must mean we are doing something wrong. This surface level of thinking keeps us in a state of constant battle. We try to suppress the parts of ourselves that feel ridiculous because we think they are in the way of our progress. We spend so much energy trying to be dignified that we lose the ability to see the comedy of the human condition. Behind this surface struggle lies a hidden assumption that we are our thoughts. We often assume that if a thought is in our head, it must belong to us and reflect our true character. But the hidden truth is that thoughts are just things that happen, like the weather or the sound of traffic outside. We assume that seriousness is the same thing as sincerity. The hidden reality is that you can care deeply about the world while still laughing at the absurdity of your own brain. We assume that the mind is a reliable narrator of reality. However, the hidden truth is that the mind is often just making things up to keep itself busy. There is a hidden assumption that if we stop taking our thoughts seriously, we will lose our edge or stop being productive. But the hidden reality is that the most creative and effective people are often the ones who are least attached to their own egos. We assume that spiritual or mental growth should feel heavy and profound. The hidden truth is that the closer you get to the truth, the lighter you usually feel. This hidden logic suggests that the mind is fundamentally ridiculous not because it is broken but because it is trying to do something impossible. It is trying to be a solid thing in a world that is always changing. This leads us to a structural pattern of how we relate to ourselves. We see a pattern where we are constantly judging our inner experiences. We have a structure of expectations for how we should think and feel. This structural pattern creates a cycle of shame. When the mind acts like a chaotic animal, we feel like we have failed. We see a structural pattern in our society that rewards people for appearing to be in total control at all times. This structure makes us hide our internal embarrassment behind a mask of confidence. Another structural pattern is our tendency to believe that more thinking will solve the problem of thinking. We have built a world where we believe that every problem has a logical answer. But the mind does not work on logic alone. It works on patterns and emotions and random associations. When we look at the brain, we see a structure designed for survival rather than for calm reflection. This structural conflict between our old survival instincts and our modern goals is what makes the mind feel so ridiculous. By recognizing these patterns, we can see that the chaos is not a personal failure but a biological fact. We can reframe our entire perspective by seeing our minds as a form of entertainment rather than a source of authority. Instead of seeing a random thought as a threat, we can reframe it as a curious event. We can reframe the feeling of humiliation as a sign of progress. If you are embarrassed by what your mind is doing, it means you are finally paying attention. Reframing the mind as ridiculous allows us to drop the heavy shield of perfectionism. We can reframe the role of a teacher or a leader as someone who is comfortable with being a work in progress. This shift in perspective turns the journey of self-discovery into a game rather than a chore. It allows us to move from a state of fighting ourselves to a state of befriending ourselves. We can reframe our mistakes as parts of a long and funny story. This perspective shift takes the power away from the inner critic. When the critic starts to shout, you can simply smile and realize that it is just doing what it was designed to do. You no longer have to win the argument because you realize the argument itself is a bit of a joke. Applying this to your daily life starts with the very simple act of noticing when your mind is being particularly loud. You can apply the principle of the ridiculous by literally laughing when you catch yourself in a loop of worry. If you find yourself obsessing over a small mistake, try to see the humor in how much energy your brain is wasting on it. You can apply the idea of not taking yourself seriously by being open about your own mental chaos with people you trust. This breaks the structure of shame and helps others feel less alone in their own struggles. Apply this by observing your thoughts as if they were a comedy show. When a strange or embarrassing thought pops up, you can say to yourself, "That is an interesting performance today." You can apply the practice of lightness in your work by being willing to admit when you do not have the answers. In your relationships, you can apply this by letting go of the need to be right all the time. By building these small moments of humor into your day, you are practicing a form of resilience that is much stronger than willpower. You are training yourself to be a person who can stay grounded even when the inner weather is stormy. It is helpful to remember that we are all walking around with these strange and wonderful machines in our heads. We should not spend our lives being afraid of them or trying to force them into a shape that does not fit. The greats of wisdom are not the people who have stopped thinking. They are the people who have realized that thinking is often just a ridiculous noise. They have learned to listen to the noise without letting it drive the car. This realization is what brings the spirit of joy into a life that can often feel heavy. We are learning that the mind is a great servant but a terrible master. When we laugh, we reclaim our position as the observer. This is how we cultivate a meaningful life in an age of bewilderment. We are moving from a world where we try to be perfect to a world where we are happy to be imperfect. This shift is what allows us to truly connect with others because we are no longer hiding our ridiculous parts. We are all characters in a very long and strange movie, and we have the power to decide if it is a tragedy or a comedy. When we embrace the mess, we find the magic. We can be the bridge builders for our own peace by showing ourselves the same compassion we would show a funny friend. The thoughts will keep coming and the mind will keep being chaos, but the weight of it can disappear in a single moment of laughter. We are not just the noise in our heads, we are the space in which the noise happens. And that space is wide and free and full of light. If you were to sit quietly for 5 minutes right now and really look at the strange and random places your mind tries to take you, what is the first thing you would find that is so ridiculous you just have to smile?